NJ.com and the Star Ledger welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politti and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start chopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant, the Rate Bowl recap show. Hope you guys had a happy holiday. The holiday season didn't end well for the Scarlet Knights, a 44-41 loss to K-State. Guys, I don't know how you felt about this one. It's 34-17 Rutgers early in the third quarter, and I was still feeling like, I don't know, the best way I could describe it was not comfortable even when they had a double-digit lead. Kansas State was just too much speed offensively. You knew they were going to keep scoring.
I agree. The way that Kansas State moved the ball in the jet sweeps and the running backs, and they just had big play. It wasn't big play explosive through the air, but it was just like, one of those games where Rutgers felt like they were chasing everyone down the field because they couldn't match the speed. So yeah. I knew that was going to be a big storyline coming in, and it kind of just played out exactly that way.
I was a bit naive. I forgot this was a Big 12 team, that stuff like this happens all the time in that league, which, my God, imagine being a fan of one of these teams and watching this every Saturday. I couldn't imagine being a sports writer covering one of these teams. My Lord, that was a brutal fourth quarter for me. And to be clear, my vantage point was different than yours. You guys got the actual football vantage point. I watched it from the baseball press box, so I'm looking at it like the all-22 style. So I can't tell if the run is 5 yards or 50. But, Rutgers got shredded on the ground. They couldn't tackle. They were lost in space. I mean, 300. Where is this number?
347
rushing yards. 347, and so many of them were like these huge, big plays. They've given up 16 plays, or 13 plays of 15 plus yards. Like just constantly, it felt like. But I had thought when they were up 34-17, the offense was rolling a bit still from the first half, and the defense was starting to figure it out. I thought they were going to be able to bleed some clock. But then the offense really, they went from, looking like the greatest show on turf in the first half to just completely, going to a shell and just not doing anything that was working. And Kansas State seemed to figure them out. And Kirk Straka, maybe partially due to technical issues, just could not figure it out. Yeah,
what was the delay? Kirk Straka, this was not talked about on TV. It wasn't, again, the Rate Bowl did not get the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P team here. Clearly, it was not exactly the best broadcast we've seen. So we didn't hear the whole Kirk Straka thing. What was the problem?
So I asked Greg what the issue was in the second half with the offense. They had 82 total yards in the second half, and 5 of their last 6 drives were not scores. So I asked what happened, and in part of the explanation, part of it was Kansas State, he said, and some of it was the fact that Kirk Straka's communication system went down. There was no communication between the booth and the coaching staff on the sideline. So that's why he was down there in the third quarter. I was a bit caught off guard when I saw him on the Jumbotron myself. So I think that played a part in it. But as Pat told me before we started recording, that also means that Kansas State's silent communication stopped working. Clearly, that didn't impact them, and Rutgers just could not. I don't know how much of a part it played, but it certainly seemed to play a part because Kirk didn't have the same vantage point down there that he usually has up here, and they just could not figure out an answer to Kansas State getting a lot more aggressive.
Yeah, it certainly. I don't know how much I fault a Kirk Straka for that. If it was them going back into a shell a little bit, certainly it looked like they were going to keep on throwing, and then Ethan Kaliakmanis throws the really bad interception. So let's not forget that it wasn't just a coaching decision to get conservative. I mean, it was he had played really well within his game the entire day, made some really big throws. The numbers aren't great. 14 to 32, 237, I think something like that. But then he had the killer pick, right? And that to me was a moment where Rutgers might have said, okay, let's reel it back a little bit. Wrongly, given what happened, but you can certainly the circumstances in the game led to that moment.
What the broadcasters actually did get really right on their call was that in the second half, Kansas State started winning the early downs. Stopping the runs for 1 or 2 yard gains, and that kind of upset Rutgers' game plan and the flow of the offense. I thought that was a really good point because that was definitely successful. Kansas State made some good adjustments, it seemed, and Rutgers really kind of didn't. So I thought, obviously, the communication thing is a whole separate storyline, but what are you going to do? I mean, that's that's life. That's life. So I think it was more of just an adjustment thing. Kansas State did a better job of doing that.
It's one of the issues with playing in a baseball stadium. One of the many issues. I think we should ban bowl games in baseball stadiums. Personally, they've been okay to Rutgers, but I mean, just the turf, as you guys saw on TV, probably was a bit of a disaster. Guys slipping all over the place, and that clearly made an impact. Not a game-changing impact, but you saw it impact some plays. The vantage point for us is brutal, and the crowd was okay. It was overwhelmingly Kansas State, which is not a shocker, but just kind of not a big fan. I've had a lot of in-person sporting events. Complaints these days after going to the Suns game last night as well, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, to get that out of the way, to me, I'm watching the first half. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. I'm thinking this offense is going to look so freaking good next year. Like they're going to be a juggernaut. And then obviously the second half changed my opinion. And then my other thought was this defense is a disaster. They have a lot of work to do. And if I'm a DC candidate watching this, I'm starting to scratch my head and say, I don't know if I can overhaul this.
And wouldn't that be like the typical, almost cruel Rutgers joke for that? Finally, after 10 years of just having a terrible offense, it became okay last season. Now it looks like it might be good. Finally, you got two NFL receivers, KJ Duffy and Strong, you got a quarterback who's, not a game breaker, but certainly a good game manager. You've got a stable for running backs. Look like you're going to be good on offense. Wouldn't it be something if now the defense goes into the tank? I mean, that would just be like, and that's what it looks like to me. Certainly, I felt the same way. I mean, as good as the offensive looked, it's hard to come away from the game feeling great about the direction of things. When you look at the defense, you saw what happened in this game. You're losing the few good players. I mean, it was Robert Longerbeam who made some play. You're going to lose Tyrene Power. You're losing some guys who are out there making the plays. Unlike on offense, all those guys are coming back. Defense. I mean, I wrote down a few guys, but Pat, really, it's I don't know who's going to play a lot of positions next year in this team.
Yeah, it's crazy because the guys that were supposed to be the most talented, experienced veteran leaders of this team on defense that were supposed to lead this team and be the difference makers. They were fine, but the end of the day, like that was not the dominant unit that it was a season ago. The reason Rutgers won last year is because its defense kept them in games long enough to win. And this year, Rutgers lost games because its defense was abysmal and couldn't tackle and made really no game-changing plays outside of, maybe that Minnesota game. So I just think maybe if you're looking for a silver lining, it's that you're going to get a total reset in terms of new players stepping up, right? Like maybe the Dariel Jabomes of the world. You're going to get some unsung heroes stepping up and a new outlook for the defense with whomever becomes the coordinator.
I think it's obviously the comparisons are easy to make between last year's situation with the offense and the defense, right? You felt really good about the defense coming in and the offense was the question mark. This is exactly the mirror image here. I'm wondering if they have the same, the offensive pieces coming back, which we felt good about the defense and obviously what happened. But I'm wondering just like how many of these younger guys can make an impact next year, right? Daryl Jaboma, you feel good about, and with Motoure next to him, linebacker will be okay. You're replacing the entire secondary. You're replacing pretty much the entire defensive line. And I'm not sure. I mean, they might have a piece or two at each of those spots in younger guys, but it feels like you really got to nail the portal to make sure there's not a drop-off, right? They had a decent start on the defensive line. They got a decent cornerback to replace one of Robert Longerbeam or Eric Rogers' spots, but it feels like they really need to nail the defensive end desperately. Eric O'Neal could be that guy, highly productive guy out of James Madison if they could land him. But even if they get him, they probably need another one or two really productive secondary guys and another defensive lineman, right? Like it feels like there's a lot to work here. You're asking for a lot of these guys to hit because no matter how good of scouting you do, sometimes these transfers don't hit. And it feels like, and again, is it possible that there's a young guy in the line that we don't know about that emerges and plays? Sure. Can one of these true freshmen have a big year, much like KJ Duff did? Sure. It's certainly possible. It feels like you're banking on a lot of things going right for you. This is in a year where you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator.
Right. And Brian, you asked the question that I think is the only one that really matters here, right? It's did this team take a step forward this year? and is it poised to take another one next year? Like, unless you think this 7-6 is great and this is where they're supposed to be, and look, it's better than 2-10, and I think you can make a strong case. That's certainly a lot. That might be it. But if you're a fan who has higher standards for this thing, as many people do and should, did it take a step forward this year? And will it take another one next year? And you asked Greg Shano the first part of that question, and he gave you one of those answers like he was ready to say something a little
Yes. So yes, look, they have the same exact record. You're right. Right. And yeah. I'm a guy that I don't put a lot of stock in the bowl games, so it wouldn't be fair to me to kill them for losing this game. But the reality is this: they have the same record, and this is a season they brought back a ton of guys. They had an easy schedule. Right. So I did ask Greg, and he was pretty adamant about it. He said it he almost preemptively mentioned it in his opening statement about how he feels good about the program. And when I asked him if he feels like they made progress, he said, without a doubt. So he is pretty strong in that. He said that if it wasn't for injuries, and not just injuries, like a amount of injuries, this is a team that could have won 9-10 games. I agree with that. The schedule was set up for them to win 9-10 games. They didn't. They won 7 games. They had a chance of getting a pretty decent win here today. They didn't. They blew it. I have to say that I'm not sure, right? Because we can play this game on paper all we want. There's potential. The offense is coming back, yada, yada. What really matters is the results. And the results this year say that Rutgers, despite having probably a better team and an easier schedule than a year ago, has the same record.
Yeah. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, we could talk about what it could have done all we want. I mean, it did not do that, right? What it could have done is irrelevant now. It's over, and it's the same record as last year. And I guess, Pat, pushing it one step forward based on what I saw tonight, you might be optimistic to think it'd be the same record next year based on the harder schedule. I get things change in college football, but they might have leveled off here. That's what would concern me if I'm a Rutgers fan. I saw what happened last year. I see what happened this year. You're looking at what's coming back, what the schedule looks like next year. I don't know. If we hit a point where this program is treading along on the same level.
Right. I think yes and no. Sorry to be boring and with that answer, but it's like if you told me at the beginning of the season that Rutgers would score 30 or more points in 5 straight games, you'd be like, that's incredible. That's huge progress. Mm-hmm. Ethan Kaliakmanis was going to be a big time answer at quarterback and be a great player for this year and next year. Then yeah, like I see the progress there. But then you have the huge step back from the defensive perspective. And it's like, you can see definitely growth, a lot of good young players. But it's like, if you can't win more than 7 games against that schedule, it's like, well, yeah, maybe it is stagnant. Maybe this is like the best it's going to be.
I don't blame anybody for feeling that way, frankly, right? Like, this is kind of reminiscent of the first time where they build it up to a certain point, which is infinitely better than where it was. But at some point you want more, and you feel like I will not shake the feeling that this season was a missed opportunity. I understand the injuries. I get all that. Still, with everything there, and it's the last time I'll say this. I promise. I've said this for months now. I'll stop. But it does feel like a missed opportunity. And now here's the thing. Next year, this team could be better and have a worse record because the schedule is so much harder. What I would say is, to make progress next year, which is all subjective, they need to get a big win in one of these games. You play a lot better teams, that gives you better opportunities to get big wins. Knock off an Oregon, an Ohio State, a Penn State. Even if you go 5-7, that to me signals a step forward, because you're at a point where you're not just beating teams at or below your level. You're able to punch with the big boys and actually win one of these games. And that makes an impact, nationally. Like, people are going to look at Rutgers. People outside of Piscataway don't watch Rutgers football. That's just the honest truth, right? So they're going to see Rutgers as 7-6 for the second straight year. Okay, Rutgers is fine now. They're not bad like they used to be. If you're able to punch above your weight, win a big game, if you're able to win 9 games, more than games than you expected, that's how you kind of make that progress. That's how you become a more attractive name for better players in the portal and in high school. And ultimately, that's how you become a better program, by getting better players and getting the results with them. Now, Are they doing good in the portal this time around? Yeah, on paper, I think so. This might be their best portal haul yet. It's hard to say that, obviously, when they nailed quarterback last year and got some decent transfers in Dymere Miller, et cetera. But the proof will be in the pudding next year. To me, I think the key will be get a big win, maybe make a bowl game. I'm not sure how confident I feel in that. Let's check it in 3 months when we're not coming right after a really brutal loss to get through.
All right, let's talk up some specifics in this game. Running backs, you gotta like what you saw there. Kyle Monangai on the sideline, assistant coach in waiting in a lot of ways. Antoine Raymond really ran the ball strong. I thought the best run might have been Jayshon Benjamin, though, when he knocked two guys off their feet getting into the end zone there for that touchdown. So that room looks really good. Got to praise Jay Patel, like 13 straight field goals. That's, near perfection at position, a 48-yarder. That's one thing I noticed. And Rutgers ran the perfect trick play, went to the reset, the back of the playbook. It's called a punt return. 67 yards out of nowhere. It was like, wait a minute. Christian Drummond, I wonder if he was like, had the green light the entire, or someone put on our Discord, someone's like, this is the entire year was a game of 12-dimensional chess where Greg Shannon didn't run one back for the moment he knew he had to. It set up a touchdown late in the game, a great punt return there. I don't know what you guys saw. Those are some things I wrote down that really struck me about the game. What do you got?
Really quick on Dremel. We talked to him after the game. We asked him, is this like a design? And he said they have run calls and they have return calls and block calls. It sounds like to me that, yes, this was a designed return. And I think that, yes, I mean, Dremel agreed that like there is some of that element of surprise where everyone's kind of expecting you to fair catch it. So I think, yes, to a certain degree, this was a setup all season, waiting, and it worked. And the other thing to me, the Rutgers Rooski won and worked again. I am shocked that it works every single freaking time. It's like the fact Rutgers basketball opens every game with this alley-oop attempt, and every time it works, I am befuddled. Because if I see this and notice it, I'm shocked teams don't notice when Antoine Raymond is standing right behind him. His hands are like this, waiting for the football. No one's like, somebody guard that guy,
Maybe they don't get film in Manhattan, Kansas yet. Maybe that's something like the canisters didn't make it on the train out to Central Kansas. I don't. Yeah, as soon as they line up like that, my first thought was, well, this is going to be the fake tush push, and there it was. Hey,
there you go.
It worked.
You know what? A sneaky, really good game too. Worth mentioning. Defensive tackle Malcolm Ray was really good.
He was. Yep.
Tyreen Powell got hurt on the first play, came back, had the most tackles on the team. Robert Longerbeam had the interception. So there were some veteran guys that had some big contributions too.
Mm-hmm. Jordan Walker, had a nice game.
Walker, yep, he's a guy that you really hope takes a step forward and can be one of the defensive edges that you really need. Ian Strong had a good game. 5 catches, 105 yards, no touchdowns, but still very productive. And yeah, I think the running backs to me is a really big thing because you feel good about what you're getting in CJ Campbell, a guy that's been productive at the college level. The freshmen, you never really know because they're, they play some spot duty. Antoine Raymond got most of his run in the season finale. You never really know. This is a big game. Guys are trying, and he's scoring 3 touchdowns, gaining 100 and how many did he have? 124 yards, right? Like that's a good game, and that you feel really good about a young guy. Whether he's a 1-2 punch with CJ Campbell, if he's a change of pace, I think you could feel good about that running back room.
What was it like on site, Brian? It looked like on TV, it looked like there's nobody there. And if anyone was there, a lot of Kansas State fans, Rutgers fan-wise, what was the vibe?
Yeah, like I said, I think Kansas State fans outnumbered Rutgers fans pretty well. It's weird because I think the camera view you guys had was to these makeshift bleachers out here in the middle of the outfield. So not most of the crowd was actually behind the camera. And to me, closest to me was Kansas State fans. So I heard them a lot. And below me was the freaking Kansas State band. I wanted to jump off the press box and kamikaze them to shut up. I couldn't take it anymore. I will say this before I forget it. I understand why Rutgers fans, students specifically, don't go to the games as much as they should. Because if I had to stand next to the band playing loud music like that every goddamn second, I too would not show up to these games. I couldn't take it anymore. Anyway, Rutgers fans were down the other end, and I couldn't really hear them much. When Rutgers was playing really well, you heard the RU chants get going. So there was some of that, but it was hard for me to really gauge. But if I had to put a number on it, put on my Jerry Carino hat, I'd say at best, 75-25 Kansas State, probably more 80-85.
Yeah, not surprising. I mean, it was always going to be a hard sell, hard trip, day after Christmas, far away, expensive flights, the whole thing. You have a nice Christmas dinner at least?
So I was at the Suns game last night.
Oh, that's right. Just tell us about the Suns game. This is good.
I mean, if we're talking about dinner, I mean, good Lord, everyone else has to step up their game. Beef Wellington for dinner. How about that?
Christmas in the NBA. They don't screw around. Totally.
Oh my God. I didn't go back for seconds because I was embarrassed, but I wish I did. It was unbelievable. And then, of course, you got your classic halftime hot dog, which was pretty good, although the buns were impossible to open. Anyway, not to go into that.
Right.
And then I watched Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and Nikola Jokic, and it was a good time.
But did they know? Did Kevin Durant know this question about Ace Bailey was coming? The reason you went, presumably, if you hadn't read it on NJ.com, you're busy with the holidays. Brian went out to the Suns game, asked Kevin Durant about Ace Bailey, which I imagine there's some risk that he might go, wait, what are you talking? Like, look at what are you doing, little man from New Jersey? What are you talking about? I mean, there's some risk of that, right? Or were you confident that he was going to answer this question in the affirmative here, that he knew?
Oh no, I was nervous. I was very nervous that this is a press conference, right? It's recorded and uploaded on NBA.com where everyone in the world watches it. So I'd emailed the PR guys a week before to kind of set up and get a credential, and here's what I'm thinking of doing. So I do think he did get a heads up. I also know KD is a hoop head. I'm sure he's actually watched Ace Bailey.
You would think. Yes.
He's also a pro, and if he had never seen a second of Ace Bailey, the PR guy would have told him, and he would have gotten a great answer together. I do think he did watch him because he introduced Ace and Dylan as part of the Nike 2024.
That's right. Of course. They would have. Yes, he would have known for that. So it wouldn't have been a surprise. That's a good point. Yep.
And I'm sure he's heard the comparisons. I mean, it sounds like he did the way he answered it, because everyone is comparing him to this kid who's going to be a top 3 draft pick. And he had a good answer. He said he thinks the comparisons are valid. He says that Ace's mid-range game is probably more advanced than KD was at that age, which is a heck of a compliment, because I watched KD drain mid-range after mid-range. People talk about the mid-range being dead, not to KD. He was knocking down every mid-range shot against the Nuggets. And then he said something that I now this is what I knew he was embellishing. He goes, him and his teammate Dylan Harper are really good. Rutgers is one of my favorite teams to watch. I'm like, KD is not watching Rutgers if they're one of his favorite teams to watch. Get out of here, pal. Now you're just buttering me up.
He was sitting there glued to FS1 or whatever channel the game was on. You could totally see it. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Good get by you.
Good.
Good transition. Should we talk a little basketball? I mean, might as well, right? We haven't talked about the Princeton game. We're all there in different places at the Princeton game. Brian working it, Pat and I in the stands. I took my son to his first college basketball game. Came away, by the way. We're walking out, of course, Princeton, 81-80 victor. Was it 81, 83, 82, whatever it was. High scoring game, down to the last moment, excitement. We're walking out. My son's like, man, are all college basketball games like that? He was hooked. He's like, he wants to go back. He is all in. He thought it was great. It was fun. It was a fun game. It just, the result was, I don't know. It's hard not to say it was pretty predictable. I mean, a lot of ways they've played this game now 12 times. The same thing has happened 12 times with the basketball team. It's been good enough to beat one good team. That's the best. That's what I can say about Rutgers basketball right now. If you're waiting to see something different happen, this is it. This is what it is.
Before I dive in, I am curious, Pat, you went with obviously your wife, who is a Princeton grad, and you have a lot of Princeton in your family. I wonder what the last sequence was like when Ace hits that shot and then Princeton wins the game.
Oh, yeah. Well, spoiler alert. Also, the family life is I have 2 young kids and they go to daycare, so they're sick all the time. So I did not actually get to the game because I was sick all weekend. I was not there, so I was watching it on TV. But my wife and my other Princeton, my brother, they were all there. They came back with their Princeton varsity sweaters on, with their chest puffed out. Hey, can we come on the podcast to talk about Princeton basketball? They deserve more credit. They're a great team. Okay, yeah. So you can come on. So yeah, it was.
I love it.
It was that guy. I watched on TV, but yeah, totally predictable, and just the rebounding and lack of defense is just astounding.
I totally understand every fan's concern watching this team after that game and where this team sits, because the truth is they have almost no margin for error now entering the Big Ten. They probably have to win 12 games, maybe even 13, assuming even if they beat, they should beat Columbia, right? But even assuming they do, probably 13 Big Ten games, which is asking a lot for any Rutgers team, right? Especially one that just can't play defense. And I think Steve Peichel and his staff have a huge task in front of them. I thought he had a rough game. Steve Peichel did down the stretch. Zach Martini's just getting switched onto Xavier Lee. They're hunting that matchup, and he's getting abused. And he did nothing to help out, whether that's, having someone come into the paint and try to help protect the rim, or, subbing Zach out or not switching, just whatever, anything, just could not figure that out. And then obviously on the last play, it's fine, I guess. Jordan Durant going 1-on-1 with Caden Pierce. Someone's got to help him out. Someone's got to come off their man.
Of course.
I don't care if you give up an open three. I take an open three over a guy bullying his way to the rim and getting there. Because even if Caden Pierce missed that shot, this is what I keep going to. Even if he missed that shot, he had like 17 offensive rebounds. He'd grab it anyway and put it back. Right? Like,
of course. Yeah.
They need to figure out this defense quickly and desperately. And, they can't depend on Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey to be superheroes every game. They just can't. And they need someone to step up. They need to fix this defense. And look, they have a chance to kind of rebuild their season here after the Columbia game. They go at Indiana. They host some heavy hitters. There's a chance there. But if you don't start racking up those wins the first 4 games back in the Big Ten, now you're really, really with your back against the wall. And if this team misses the NCAA tournament, I think we all agree it would be a colossal failure that really, and then we shouldn't get ahead here and start talking about what would happen if this happens, but Steve Pikiell built all this goodwill at Rutgers. If they miss the NCAA tournament with 2 NBA draft picks, it feels like all of that will be gone.
I don't think there's, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And this one, again, it just felt like a microcosm of the entire thing for this team. The end game was bad, but I look at a lot of the things, even offensively, it just seemed like there's not much of a plan there. They had that great steal, that 3-pointer. Get it? Ace Bailey took like 16 shots. That 3-pointer might be the first time Ace Bailey was open in the game. Like, he just takes all these ridiculous shots. Like, there's never any set play to get him free for a jump shot. He just hits contested shots game after game. There's so many things that think about this. This was a game where Princeton 8 of 18 from the line. It might not have been close if they hit their free throws. Rutgers was 18 of 23. And I guess I come back to this, Pat, and you want to say, okay, you have the entire Big Ten play in front of you, but it is a lot to ask what this team has to do now. It's a lot.
It's so much, and it's like what Brian was saying about putting all the pressure on Dylan and Ace Bailey to make up for all the shortcomings elsewhere. And it's a lot to ask, right? Like, and think about like the magic run that Rutgers went on with Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr. to win those 5 games in a row. Like, that's just, those things just don't ever happen like that, right? Like, that was complete lightning in a bottle. Like, you can't count on that to happen again. It's just unfathomable. So yeah, it's a revamp. Got to figure out the defense.
Couple quick things on that. I know that recovery is going to be talked about all the time. I think that team was a little different because that was a successful team with a lot of seniors who frankly probably just started the season off slow because, for whatever reason, they were complacent or whatever you want to say, and they had another gear that they hit in February to go to the NCAA tournament. I'm not sure this team has another gear. That is my concern, is that they can't play better than this, that this is kind of what they're stuck at. To your point, Politi, throughout Steve Pikiell's tenure, the stagnant offense and the offensive issues has always been a thing, right? They've always been an ISO-heavy team that depends on individual talent to bail them out, and that was enough because you had the defensive pieces that can make a game 55, 53, and you have just enough scoring to win that. Now you're talking about games where you have to outscore the other team, and you hope, yes, you have 2 of the best ISO scorers in the country. And I'm not sure how much of the ISO issues are, Ace Bailey just getting the ball and doing his own thing, or if it's the coaching. But based on the tendencies of this coaching staff over the past decade, I tend to believe it is just a lack of offensive creativity. And you have 2 guys who are shooting 44% on 3 in PJ Hayes and Zach Martini. I can't remember the last time they had an open shot off a screen or off some off-ball movement, or it just doesn't exist in this offense. Right. And that to me is the big concern, is that even if you have these weapons, sure, they're not great defenders, but they're plus offensive players, right? And this team might have to just win games 90 to 90, 94 to 90 or whatever. I'm not sure this staff is built to do that. And I don't know. We'll see. I think Indiana will be a big litmus test. If they win at Indiana, I'll feel a lot better. I still think this team will make the NCAA tournament. Call me naive, call me optimistic, whatever. I still think they will. But I don't blame anybody if they've lost hope already. I really don't.
Yeah. Right now, if I had to go pick in either direction, which I would be certainly in the other direction. And it goes back to the faith without results thing, like Chris Ash quote. Like, if you believe they're going to do it, you have faith. You just have faith in something that we have not seen. Very simple. It's like the 2022 team. You had result. You had something. You knew they'd done it before. You knew what the players are capable of. It was a heavy lift, but it wasn't completely out of. You just knew they were good enough. They had done it. This team, we have not seen it. We have not seen anything to let me believe we're going to see 12 wins. Again, prove me wrong. Do it. I mean, it would be a great story. Certainly, the talent is there, but it's just we have not a small sample size now. Pat, 12 games. There's been a lot of basketball played, and they have beaten one and a half good teams.
Yeah. And it's like they're not doing it in this style, or this went wrong in this game, and that's the reason they lost. It's always the same thing, right? They can't make stops, right. And they rely on Dylan Harper to drive to the basket. That's the offense, right? Like, so it's very, very, very vanilla, and it's not any. There's no exceptional. There's nothing transcending the game at all. So I think, that's a really good way to put it. It's blind faith at this point.
What I would say is, I'm not sure they've beaten a good team, right? Notre Dame is a mediocre team at best. There might be a quad 3 game at some point. I guess you mentioned Penn State.
I think Penn State's a good win. I mean,
it's a good team.
They were good. That's a game.
They were good. I mean, they're a good team, right? But that's a win you have to have because you have to protect home court. That to me was the big takeaway from that game. And now more than ever, this is, they're not going to get any big non-conference wins. So they have to, the way they made the RAC like a place they didn't lose that one year, they went 18-1 or whatever, 19-20. Mm-hmm. They almost have to have a similar season there this year to really have a chance of making the tournament. So I had another point. I lost it. It's late, and I'm on a different time zone.
Yeah. Right. Come out and beat Indiana or Wisconsin or Purdue, UCLA. There you go. You get 4 games to start. If you take 2 or 3 of them, I'm listening. Right. I'm paying attention. You're gonna have to. If you don't, we'll be breaking down spring practice previews in mid-February here on the Rutgers Rant. All right.
Well, to wrap up this, right? So we entered this 2024-25 season with hopes of a really breakout football season with, the greatest basketball season since 1976. And we're about to enter January next week. Football was okay, right? Bare minimum, if not a step back. Basketball is not trending in the right direction. I mean, I guess in hindsight, the most obvious thing, right? This is the most Rutgers thing ever. I'm not feeling very good, fellas, about how the last 3 months have gone for Rutgers.
Well, the good news, Rutgers fans, is that when it comes to Brian and predictions, you know that this is something he can't be trusted on. So hammer the money line, you told.
Rutgers money line. It's so goddamn good when they're up 34-17 with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, okay? I look like a freaking genius. Now, if people actually did try to pay for their plane tickets by buying Rutgers money line, I am very sorry.
There's 2 of us on the podcast who said that Rutgers would cover but lose. I mean, the 2 of us said that, didn't we, Pat? Weren't we?
I'm shocked.
High-scoring game and close.
I couldn't believe the way they scored the way they moved the ball without Monungai, like threw it all, big plays downfield. That was pretty incredible from a prediction standpoint. But yeah, the hammer the money line is. I get a T-shirt with that or something.
With Brian Fonseca's face on it. I think we can sell that and raise
Michael with Michael pounding nails on the back.
Fade Fonseca. Always fade Fonseca. That's the biggest lesson here.
That's the lesson.
I had a hot year in 2023. I'm back to my usual level this year. Fade Fonseca. It's been a long week in Phoenix. I hear it's been snowing in New Jersey. I'm not sure I'm ready to get back to that, but
yeah, I'd stay there if I were you. Come home, Brian. Come home. All right, let's sign off there. Fonseca's got to go back to the hotel, get a snack. Pat and I have to go to bed. We have kids. We're home. Great bowl loss to the Scarlet Knights. We'll be back early next week. Talk some basketball. Hopefully, it'll be a happier show than this one. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at nj.com/insider.